Good evening, Midrealm. Thank you for joining us and welcome to this, our fourth and final fireside chat with their majesties. Final. Tonight, we are very lucky to have with us a representative from each of the four patent peerage orders. And we've struggled to come up with four names because we have so many awesome peers, but we have quite a panel for you tonight. And before we get started, we are going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves. And I know that I was a little heretical and went alphabetically last time. So tonight I'm going to go strictly by the book, and we are going to go in order of precedence of the patent order. So with that, would each of you be so kind as to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your peerage?
Good evening, Your Majesties. I'm Sir Jamie von Atzinger. I have been a knight for 6 years and was a landed baron before that. For those that don't know our customs, the regalia of the knighthood, how you would find us on the field, so to speak, is gold chain, a white belt, and sometimes golden spurs, although that's not as common.
Thank you. Who do we have next?
Me. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I am Laureate Aveline de Shrewsbury, and I am a member of the Order of the Laurel. I have been a member of the Order of the Laurel for 83 days, relatively new. The Laureate is the order that is primarily charged with promoting the diverse arts and sciences. And the regalia for a laurel is laurel leaves, such as the wreath that I'm wearing, or I have Laureate necklace.
Excellent.
I am Ariana. I am a member of the Order of the Pelican. And I have the great distinction to be, as we termed it last night, the venerable one here. I have been a Pelican for rising 25 years. So when you're looking for a Pelican, you can find one by, thank you for the idea, the Pelican Medallion. It is usually a pelican in her piety, because they are said to vuln their breasts to feed their young, and they are a symbol in many cultures of service.
Excellent. Thank you. And last but not least.
Hi, I'm Master Adam Coman. I am a member of the Order of Defense. It is our newest order. It's only been around since 2015, which means it's been in existence for 7 years. And I am the 7th recognized member of that order in the Middle Kingdom, which makes me either James Bondy or Dopey, depending on how you look at it. Our regalia is a white livery collar. If you look for a badge, the badge will be 3 swords pointing towards each other like this.
Excellent. So before we get going, I just want to remind everyone that we'll be asking through a series of questions for this panel. And each of these questions was sent in to our majesties by you, the populace. There is no way we can get through all of the questions that you sent. You guys were super prolific in sending in questions. So we're just starting at the top and working our way down, and we'll get as many as we can. What we've asked our peers to do tonight is to treat this as if we were a group of friends sitting around an actual fire and just have a chat, have a talk. And hopefully that will be well received.
I think so. Well, we might all learn something, which is always my goal. So I'm just gonna, as we said, start at the top, and we're gonna go through this. We all know that sort of becoming a peer is a process within the SCA. But the process doesn't really end when you become a peer, when you're recognized as a peer. So the question that came in was, how did your perspective of the SCA, the kingdom, the peerage, of anything and everything change after becoming a peer? And if anyone wants to jump in and start off on that,
I'll jump in on this one since I'm the newest.
perfect.
So, I think that the first and biggest thing that I learned is that there's so much work that is being done behind the scenes. Not that I didn't think that lawyers were hardworking, but once, sort of the curtain was pulled back and I was a member of the order, and I'm slowly getting into the things and learning how to be a laurel. I'm like, wow, they're doing so much behind the scenes to really try to be positive influences in the kingdom, to reach out and mentor people, even if they aren't necessarily in a formal mentoring relationship, to think of ways in which they can promote the arts and sciences, even especially during the pandemic. How we do things online. So I think that's the thing that's been sort of the most exciting for me as I, learn things. Wow, they're doing so much behind the scenes, and I'm really proud to be part of the order and see that. And I have to imagine most of the other orders, much the same, but they can speak for themselves.
Wow. I got to say that I was put on vigil the very same evening that I was announced as the next Kingdom Seneschal. So,
Wow.
I had a moment of, okay, and for an encore, I don't know, do this thing over here. So I had a great deal of surprise and pleasure to see how much work, because I actually had spent that day meeting with other Kingdom Seneschals as it happened, and I got to see, most of them were Pelicans, and so I got to see sort of behind the scenes there, and then started to work into seeing behind the scenes in this kingdom and in the peerage. So it was sort of a lovely stepping off period, and an understanding that there's sort of this next phase of discovery and figuring out what I could do next. So that's sort of my approach.
I have an interesting perspective on this. Like I mentioned, I was a landed baron before I was a peer, and so I saw a little bit behind the curtain before I got to step into the order. But what I was a little bit surprised by was the tenor of my experience changed when I became a peer. So on the path to peerage, especially for me becoming a knight, it was very much a self-centered, I wouldn't say selfish, but it was a self-centered process. I needed to get better at this. I needed to show that I could do this. I needed to grow in this area. My experience of being a peer is very much more global, much more kingdom. How can I support? How can I grow those around me? And it's been a really interesting shift in perspective for me.
I think that shift in perspective is really a big thing that's happened for me as well. Rapier fighting has been going on within the kingdom long before this peerage was crafted. So rapier participants lived in this space where we were recognized as excellent. We were recognized as contributors. We were recognized for being able to be peer-like. But once the peerage came into existence, and certainly once I became a member of the order, seeing behind the curtain was, I think, the best way to kind of describe it. There's an opportunity to go beyond, to be able to do the things that you do well, but also to be able to expand your influence for the benefit of everybody else in the kingdom. That's something I really didn't expect was going to happen. And I've enjoyed being able to do that. I've enjoyed being able to be part of that.
I guess to sort of sum up, now that I'm thinking about it, what everything says, it's like everything and nothing changes at the same moment. It's surreal because, you're still there. You're still doing the same stuff. It's the sun comes up and comes down. You put your garb on the same way. Everything's the same.
Chop wood, carry water.
Yeah. But it's perspective.
Yeah.
And that's everything.
No, I think that's an amazing way to sum up.
And I think for some of us, every step in our personal growth gives us that again and again and again. And the SCA just gives us a great platform for that, right? Because every day we can reinvent who we are and what we're doing, as long as we're all moving in a positive direction, right?
Yeah.
So in listening to you, what I heard was that you all do a lot of work. And I know that that's the fact because you're peers, and peers do chop wood, carry water, as was. So how is it that you're able to keep your passion for your activity alive?
This will sound a little bit heretical, but bear with me. Some days are hard. You do go through cycles where I don't want to go to practice, and I'll go to the event because I have to, not because I want to, because I've got these obligations to be there. And yet, even though those moments occur, like they should, getting to talk to other people in the SCA, getting to go put on armor and fight some more, getting to do the things that I love with the people I love, really just re-energizes me in a way that I can get stuck in my own head. I can wind up spiraling without talking to somebody else, and going to an event, having these kinds of conversations online breaks that cycle in a positive way for me, makes me realize, yeah, I do love this game. I do like being part of this community. So how do I keep the passion alive? Talk. I try to make sure I'm part of the community of people around me.
And I'm a huge fan, and it kind of ties into that, of doing more of what you want to see more of. Right. And so when I get in those ruts, when I get in that, like, if I have to go to another event where I've got to do the thing that I don't want to do, my solution has always been, okay, make an event where that's not the focus, or go to that event and find the people who aren't doing that and are still having fun, and join them and enhance their fun. And I think that's, you kind of mentioned this as well, Adam, is that part of the privilege of being a peer is that you can bring that energy and you can bring attention to things that maybe you didn't have that pull before. Maybe you didn't have that notoriety, that social connection to bring attention and energy to things.
The regalia gives you a visibility, which is really important when you're trying to maintain the up, keep things focused on the right direction forward. And it's a little daunting to realize that you're going to get to have the spotlight all the time now. But really embracing that, really committing to, all right, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make sure good things happen because of it, is just essential for me, at least, being part of who we are in the Middle Kingdom.
So I don't know that I've been around long enough to have hit a period where I wasn't feeling excited and refreshed. As I mentioned, I'm new to this, but I do think back to at the beginning of the pandemic, an artist who creates costumes for people who go to events. There was suddenly no purpose, right? Like, I know there was a purpose, but there's the sense of like, why would I bother creating costumes or working on my art if nobody can enjoy it and see it? And so I kind of pivoted at that point to teach online classes. So it was, well, I'm not feeling super inspired to make that art, but maybe I can inspire others or help teach others, or just keep others engaged in some way. Maybe they don't even want to block print, for example, but they are interested in just sitting around in a class and being with other people. So I think that I would probably kind of go back to that, is I'm not maybe feeling as inspired to do what I normally do or what I'm known for doing, but I am there and visible, as Adam mentioned. The regalia kind of makes you well known, so that I would then turn and try to say, how can I help others? How can I inspire others? Maybe I'm not feeling particularly inspired, but hopefully I can help inspire others in some fashion.
I think that's a good thought. I find that the idea of the whole balance thing, and sometimes you're kind of tired, and what a lot of Pelicans do is behind the scenes, and it is one, because it's the service order. Sometimes you don't really see what that Pelican might be doing. And if I get, in one of the, I don't want to do the thing. If I can go to an event and just watch others and be helpful in some very different way, that is refreshing and restoring. And to see for me now, to see all of the people who are doing other things and maybe continuing something that I had a small hand in starting, boy, that is more, that is such a positive feeling. And to see things continue, it's just, it's lovely.
I think there's
I think that's really
that there's immense power in that person-to-person connection and seeing others grow and inspiring that. So that's true all around, it sounds like.
I would add that the opportunity to have formal dependence is another way that I've seen the passion really cycle, and a virtuous cycle, because you have that directed one-on-one interaction and conversation with one person who is working to do the thing that you are recognized for. And so you get to help them with accelerating them through the parts that they find easy, helping them find ways to improve in spite of it being something that's difficult for them.
And helping them find their joy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It is that dependence relationship isn't just about, all right, I'm going to help that person over there become a member of my order. It's actually something that builds and rebuilds the passion for me, because I can watch their joy. I can watch their improvement, their excellence arriving. That's incredibly powerful.
You guys have been reading ahead. The next question on my list is, what is the best way? I did not
do that.
What is the best way to connect with a peer if someone wants to be a peer? So how do you get into one of those sort of one-on-one dependent relationships? And this is my reminder that we have a lot of people watching this who are fairly new to the SCA. So if you wouldn't mind telling us what the names of your, not names, but what the titles or terminology used for the dependents of the various orders are, that would be great.
Well, I put my foot in it, Your Majesty, so I'll go first there. The Order of Defense, being new and being newest, we honestly struggled for a couple of years trying to find a broadly identifiable word for our dependents. We seem to have found the word provost as the best word for a Master of Defense's student. So provost is most common. Other words also get used. Cadet has some legacy terminology and history attached to it. People like that word. The Middle Kingdom will sometimes also hear the word ward. That's rare, but provost is really the biggest, most common one you will find. How do you want to connect to a Master of Defense to become a provost, or to look at the path for provost? Well, it will sound silly. Step one is come to the list field and fight. Get a chance to put on armor and go play with us. Play with your friends for a bit. Decide if this martial activity is fun, is good for you. If it is, you will inevitably find people you like talking to, some more than others. And the ones you like talking to more, that's a great opening to deepen the conversation. I actually wrote a guide on how to way back for rapier fighters, because before the peerage existed, there was still this thirst, this desire to have a student-teacher relationship. How do you do that when there isn't a peerage involved? And I wrote a couple words on what that was, but it really just comes down to find the person you, for me, it's, do I like spending time with you? Do you have an interest in becoming a member of the Order of Defense? And are you a good person? Are you somebody who I think is worthy of being here too? So that's what works for me.
Yeah, I bet there are as many different relationships as there are peers, you know, or dependents. As a Pelican, traditionally, our dependents are called proteges, and they are usually, not always, signified as with a yellow belt. Although I have given, my husband and I, Eliyahu, have given our proteges a token that they could wear, a pin, something that might be more appropriate to the period that they prefer to recreate. So there is some flexibility in those symbols, I think. And I would, just encourage someone to watch someone serving, watch a peer, watch a Pelican if you're interested in service, or a knight if you, go out to the list field, or, go to an arts and sciences display and see who's doing what. Those sorts of things, find those people, talk to them, see how that relationship or how that conversation goes, learn what you can, and let that evolve. Perhaps that peer could then connect you with the person who would be right for you if they aren't. So it really is about that connection and finding the right relationship.
And I think an important part of that is to have an explicit conversation about expectations, because as you mentioned, there are as many relationships as there are peers, and that includes a single peer with multiple students. So a student for a knight is called a squire, and typically wear a silver chain and a red belt. And I have a couple squires, and my expectations for each of those squires is very different. And it can be absolutely possible that you have a personal connection with a peer, but your expectations don't match up. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing, but that's a conversation to have well before you have a formal relationship. And again, because if your expectations don't match up, perhaps they know of another peer whose expectations are on board with yours. And that's, again, not a bad thing if it's addressed.
I have I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Do you want to go ahead if it's piggybacking off?
Mine is just real quick.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend who is also a rapier fighter in my local group. She is good. She and I would make an absolutely atrocious student-teacher relationship. We both laughed out loud when somebody had asked why she wasn't my protege. She is a protege to somebody else. I keep saying protege, provost. She is a provost to somebody else. They work very well together. She and I, it would be oil and water. It would not work well.
In terms of the Order of the Laurel, our students are called apprentices, and it is usually signified by a green belt. But I actually had 2 masters to which I was an apprentice, a little bit unusual. They were very different in terms of what they offered to me and what I felt I offered to them. One was much more focused on research, critical thinking, challenging the status quo of things. And the other is more focused on the craftsmanship and the artistry and some of the research as well. But for me, they sort of filled 2 roles. But one of the interesting things that I found or just sort of discovered through the process was I was afraid to talk to any Laurels about the potential of having a relationship. I almost felt like it was the prom and they had to ask me. I couldn't ask them. And it was funny because I discovered once I finally did, and I really feel like I met up with the two people that I really needed to help me along my path. But after I agreed to that formal relationship, it was funny how many Laurel said, oh man, I was always wishing we would talk. And I was like, wait, I could come ask you? That seems weird, right? So some people are very introverted. Some people want to not be overbearing in their presence as a peer. Others just, they want to kind of feel things out. So don't be afraid to have that conversation with the peer in the order that you might be particularly interested in sort of pursuing the path. Not everyone is going to necessarily ask you to have a relationship or engage you in that conversation. And I know a ton, especially, I don't know if it's true for all of y'all, but Laurel's many tend to be introverts. So we kind of have had this sort of internal conversation. So, and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm kind of curious and maybe having a more formal relationship, and then having that conversation about expectations. What do you want? I needed Laurels that were going to challenge me and argue with me every step along the way, right? That's what I needed for my path. And then they also told me what I needed that I didn't know I needed, right? So that's when you have those conversations and it feels good, it feels right, it feels like this is the person, whether I ever make it to the peerage or not, that's going to help me grow. That's the relationships. And whether it's formal or not, it doesn't have to be formal. It could be an informal relationship, but don't be afraid to reach out to anybody in any of the peerages that you think might be able to help you grow.
I think that's a super important point, is that it doesn't have to be formal, that it is about the path, and different people can be right at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is, it is all about the journey, which sounds so hokey, but it is, and it really is about, what is going to serve the protege, the apprentice, the provost, the squire's needs, and what is going to be right for the peer. So, and how that relationship works. So I think that's super important about just understanding that maybe it's just a mentoring, conversation kind of relationship. I've had a couple of folks who were elevated, who while they were in no protege kind of relationship, certainly I coached and mentored them, talked to them quite a lot. So, relationships with peers are all across the board.
We are just as human.
Just as human. Darn the luck.
Man, there's no superpowers with the peerage. I thought you got superpowers. No.
So I think that human component.
If we get to that
really,
question at the end of the list, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
We don't say that out in public, right? We don't talk about
sort of like the first rule of Fight Club.
Right. No superpowers. Nope, none at all. But I think it's really important. You both hit on it. You're human. At the end of the day, you're human. And I've talked about this with other folks before, especially peers, and that there's this concept of peer fear. Don't approach a peer ever. You can't talk to a peer, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is every peer is just like every non-peer. Once we take off the funny clothes and we step off the event site, whatever. So to me, it's totally okay for for anyone to come up to a peer and just start talking, ask questions, be curious. Would you guys have any words on that?
Well, it's a funny thing, when we get to this level of achievement and passion, we tend to like talking about what we nerd out about. And in fact, that was one of the first things to kind of ease my peer fear, was realizing that knights really like talking about fighting. And I suspect mods really like talking about fencing and, again, human connections, right? And if you want to get to know some of these people better, you have a pretty good in about what they will go on about.
Yeah, I would agree.
It is really difficult to decide as a peer. to have the conversation with myself of, do I invite this person to become my student in a formal sense, as opposed to the informal sense that I've obviously already been interacting with them on. As a master of defense, I spend a lot of time on the rapier field, and whether that's studying a book or putting on the armor and fighting, I'm doing those things. And if I'm having that conversation with that person in the context of doing those things, I'm teaching, I'm invested myself, I'm involved with that. And one of the parts that I still struggle with is the defining line between somebody I am teaching and somebody who is interested in becoming a dependent, and somebody who's interested in becoming my dependent. I may never find the answer to that question, but that's been where my head has been on that topic.
My answer is, I don't care if you want to be my apprentice, just come and nerd out with me. Come talk to me about anything. And it doesn't have to be anything that I know anything about. If you're excited and you want to tell me about something, or if you want to pick my brain on how to approach something, I would love to talk to you. So it doesn't have to have any kind of formality, as we kind of mentioned before. It's, let's just sit around and talk. If I could sit around all day and talk about arts and sciences, I would.
You know, I think that there's all of us really like to sort of talk about the stuff that interests us. And I think it's knowing maybe how and when to talk to somebody too. Like, don't try to talk to a knight if he's focused on a fight, or she
Crown
is
tourney
focused.
is not the time to ask them to be a dependent.
Yeah, you know, and you know, if you know, it's just pick your time. I guess that's the thing. If someone is in the middle of a concentration focused activity, sometimes it's not always the best time. Sometimes it is. I mean, if they're doing something and could use some help, that might be the absolute perfect time to ask them.
I think that's a great way to make a new friend. How can I help?
Yeah.
Can I be part of this? Can we do things together in the future?
You look busy. Is there something I can do to help?
That's a preferred way to make friends in my world. So I'm going to move us on a little bit, because I don't think there's any way we're going to make it through even half of these questions tonight, but I'm enjoying the conversation anyway. So the question came up talking about the SCA, the mid-realm, all of it has grown and changed over time in the 50 plus years we've existed. So do you think the perception of the standard of what it takes to become a peer has changed? And do you think that affects people's desire or even a frustration if they've been trying for or on the path, as it were, for a long time? How do you think that fits?
So in addition to being a member of the Order of Laurel, I am on the staff of the Kingdom Minister of Arts and Sciences. And I am the judges coordinator for the Kingdom Arts and Sciences competition. We just had a very interesting conversation in one of our meetings about upcoming opportunities for arts and sciences. And the conversation that we had was, there is this perception that there is a prescribed sort of order in which you need to do things, or there are sets of things you must do in order to ever be considered to become a Laurel. One of which was, you must compete in the Kingdom Arts and Sciences competition. And I started laughing and I said, I've never done that, right? So there is also the perception that you must have this big project, your sort of pièce de résistance that you're going to show everybody, and that's going to be how you'll become a Laurel. That doesn't necessarily work. So I would just, there seems to be this perception that as people are trying to sort of analyze, well, what did it take this person? And what did it take that person? And what are the trends? And while there may or may not be there may be more discernment in terms of who we're bringing into the order. I don't know. I don't have any real frame of reference for that. What I would say is there is no prescribed thing you must do in order to get in, other than just love what you're doing, do your best at it, challenge yourself. I mean, the sort of generic things that you would hope and expect anybody that's doing the arts and the sciences, whether Laurel or not, would be doing. So I don't know that it is necessarily harder or easier to get in, or if it's a more exclusive club or not. But what I would say is there's no prescribed path.
I think the puppy agrees.
Okay.
Applause.
You know, they used to always talk about masterwork in the Pelican, and there is no need to do. I think it's the same sort of thing that you were talking about, and you know, you can do one great big huge thing. You know, change the course of a river. That might be one way, but there's also the sort of body of work that builds up over time, and people say, wow, what a hole would be left if this individual wasn't a part of us or somehow disappeared. What a hole. So, you know, that I think is often misunderstood, that it doesn't have to, you don't have to do one big thing, or you don't have to reinvent something. Do your thing really well. And the best way to do your thing really well is to really find that thing you like. And, you know, again, maybe that sounds trite, but if you're doing something you like, then you'll do a lot of it and you'll get good at it.
Yeah, chime back in really quickly. It's interesting when in the Order of the Laurel, oftentimes people will be known to be a laurel of block printing or a laurel of calligraphy and illumination. And so there's sort of these specialties that often get associated with people, though that's not necessarily the reason that they were made or part of the Order of the Laurel. So I heard somebody once say, well, I really want to do costuming, but there's so many costuming laurels, they may not need any more. And I'm like, what? Okay, forget all that nonsense. If it's what you love, do it, and do it well, and do it, you know, with everything, your whole heart. And if there's some niche that you fall into because it's what you're interested in, again, do it. But there's this sort of weird, I think, thing where people feel like they have to be, you know, a special butterfly to get noticed, and you don't. I think it really has more to do with your love and your passion and your excitement and your dedication in any of the orders. That is what's going to get you noticed, not some special thing.
Yeah, and I think particularly in the Pelican, people sometimes default to, oh, I have to hold an office.
Right.
I have to, you know, and really,
There's no prescription.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, that is one way. Sure, you can. You don't have to.
To take it back a bit, and I think I'm probably going to steal Adam's thunder here. There is a very clear progression in the martial orders. I think one of the best examples of that is I was a fencer for 10 years before I was knighted. And I recently went to an event where I got to do a rapier turning. It was a blast, and I lost almost every fight. And at the end of it, I asked for some training, and the person training me said, oh, well, what style do you use? And I laughed because we didn't have styles 10 years ago. I was trained by this person. That's as far as I can tell you. And in that short amount of time, the rapier community has blossomed and gained mastery and an understanding far beyond anything that I experienced when I was an active fencer. And I can look back at techniques and videos of armored combat 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's worlds different and worlds better. I also think that we are doing a much better job of bringing people to that level than we have done in the past. Yes, it's in a sense harder to get there because the bar is higher for martial orders than it was. And we are better teachers, and we understand better what it takes to get there.
Our order has only existed for 7 years, so it's unlikely that we've changed much in 7. That's also kind of a lie. the reality is that to be a peer, you do peer things. If what you want to do is be recognized as being excellent at a task, then you should do the task, and do the task because you love it, and look for ways to become better, and inevitably you will become excellent at that. What we considered in the SCA to be excellent costuming in 1983 is not what we consider to be excellent costuming in 2013. So those, I think Jamie is exactly right. On the one hand, the bar is necessarily higher because we've all gotten better at what it means to do the thing. On the other hand, we are all better teachers at doing the thing. We can accelerate people beyond what we saw in the 1990s, and then take that acceleration forward to become even better tomorrow, next year, next decade.
You know, I think we have to acknowledge here as we talk through this, and maybe this is where I say the difficult thing. Because I'm old and venerable. I think at some point in that whole calculation, we have to acknowledge that there's that nebulous but super important, yes, I'm going to say it, peer-like quality thing.
We're all laughing because we all know we can't explain it either.
Right. It's pixie dust. But it's real. I mean, there is the comport yourself like a peer, which I think if we were to distill it down, it's be an adult.
Do the hard thing.
Yeah. Pick it up, do the thing.
It's a lot of professionalism too, I think.
Yeah.
Listening to all of you talk, I've got sort of two thoughts in my head on the two different aspects of this. This idea that sure, we've maybe raised the goalpost, maybe we're expecting more than we did in 10, 20, 30 years ago, but we've also increased the level of our beginners proportionately. So when you're a year or two in, you're already better than maybe somebody at a master level was 20, 30 years ago. Because we bring you in at that higher level. We've got the basics down to a much better package, essentially.
And I think research is so much better today too, in all of our respective areas of geekness, right? I mean, I think about when I started in the SCA in 1987, and my local library had precisely one book on anything that was medieval that wasn't like a kid's book. And even our local library, I mean, maybe 5, 6 books that I could try to drag something out of. And by the way, for you younger folks, that was before the internet. So we actually read these paper books. That was really neat.
You're adorable.
I am.
So thank you for giving me time to remember what my second thought was there. Perfect. So on this conversation of peer-like qualities, and several of you have said this idea of recognizing peers and doing what you love. And I think it's not so much that you are made a peer when the crown, whoever the crown is at the time, chooses to give you all of the regalia. It's that they say you are already a peer and we see that. So I think you become a peer before you become a peer, as it were. So as I think all of you said at some point in your conversation just now, if you want to become a peer, start doing peer things, right? And just do what you love and do it well and share that passion with others, which is what peers do. So I think it's that circular, difficult, nebulous.
That's why we love and hate the phrase, Your Majesty.
I understand.
Well, and I think it's also a little thing is also understand that when something doesn't go right, when things go pear-shaped, what do you do to fix it? That's an important thing. I mean, what do you do when the bout doesn't really go well? What do you do? what do you do with that seam that, ooh,
How do you handle loss, however you define loss? It's
Right.
easy for Jamie and I to point to what that might look like. Boy, I've done some sewing projects that those were losses.
So I have an answer for that. When that happens, you just bunch it up and you toss it in the corner so it can think about what it's done. And eventually it like grows dust and mold and you just throw it away.
No, you share it. You say, look how I screwed up and look how I learned from that.
Oh yeah, no, you do that too. I mean, I am a huge fan of sharing mistakes because we don't get better
Right.
by being perfect. We get better by making mistakes and learning from them. And I think I love it when people share mistakes, because people I think of as experts in a field still make mistakes. And that makes it okay for me to make mistakes as a beginner. And that's powerful.
So in the last few minutes, you guys have all given some fantastic ideas about what it is to be a peer and the strength in being a peer. But I think there's a reality out there that our last question brought out, and that was the word frustration. And I don't want you to cue in on that word frustration, but I'm gonna for a second. And I think folks are sometimes frustrated because they come to the SCA and it is a very new social dynamic. We have stratification because there are people who have achieved a level of excellence, that is to say, peers. And in some groups, maybe those peers are a little jaded or quiet, or they're introverts, or they've just had all they can take. And who knows, right? We all have those days. But whatever that is, there is this idea of peer fear. And our question from our populace is, what are you doing to overcome peer fear? And by the way, I've never had this. I don't get the concept, but I acknowledge that it is an absolute real thing. And we have to, because, weird social dynamics. So I'm putting you on the spot, peers. What are you doing to overcome peer fear?
I am trying to make myself as accessible as possible. I try to post regularly on social media and some of my blog sites and my websites. I try to engage people locally. Come on over to my house. Let's do some art. At events, I don't really think about who's a peer and who's not a peer, but I am now, or I didn't previously, but now I'm trying to think about, okay, who might be a little nervous to approach me, which seems weird to me, right? Like the concept that somebody doesn't feel like they could walk up to me and just shoot the breeze is weird to me. But because I wear regalia, I have to be aware that that might be the case for somebody, especially if they don't really know me, right? So I'm trying to make myself as accessible as possible, and also initiating conversations when I feel that it would be appropriate and that it wouldn't freak people out, or they're in the middle of something, it's not the right timing. And I think that one of the things, especially for those that are the members of the Order of the Laurel, is somebody told me when I was first sitting my vigil, and it was not a laurel. They said, oh, well, now that you're being made a laurel, you can't go to any classes. And I said, what do you mean I can't go to any classes? And they said, well, because people might be nervous if you're in the class, or, you don't really need to know anything because you've reached the pinnacle. I said, first of all, nobody's stopping me from going to classes, right? That's not, if that was part of the deal, I wasn't going to sign up for it. So I think just being engaged and involved and there and present and initiating as appropriate is the best way that I can think of to relieve peer fear. However, if you all have ideas, shoot me a message and let me know. How can I better make myself seem accessible and approachable to you? Because I'm not perfect. I don't know all the answers. So if you've got suggestions, let's hear them.
I got to say that apparently what I do is I make silly faces when I'm the only one on camera. So that's what I do. But I think it comes down to being gracious and kind. I've done some things and have been offered. I have earned. How about if I just flat out say I've earned where I'm sitting, and but that I think obligates me to help others. So it's not I'm up on this pedestal. It is here, let me help you up on this pedestal with me. So.
What a fantastic sentiment. Thank you for teaching me that.
I like that a lot.
I often say I'm building a bigger table, but I love the pedestal idea. That's a fantastic point.
And I think Aveline hit it too, that it's about being aware that this is a possibility and that this is happening. And if you see somebody who it seems like wants to engage but isn't, then you can be the one to reach out. And again, keeping in mind that not everybody wants to talk in groups, not everybody wants to be approached. Being sensitive to all of that and finding that balance of this. I've been talking for a while. My peer buddies have been talking for a while. That person hasn't. What do you think about this? And being very conscious and deliberate about spreading that attention.
Mm-hmm.
I laugh. I try really hard to engage my community, by which I mean the people I'm standing within earshot of my voice, which can be large, and share stories, and sharing not just my stories, but making sure other people get the chance to share their stories. If everybody gets to do that, then everybody gets to feel like they've all come to the table, like they're all on the same pedestal, which means it's not a pedestal anymore. And once that gets to happen, the fear disappears. You wind up with this great conversation with this human being who told this ridiculous story of this one time when they were in that one place and they did that one thing.
With the stuff.
And everybody can enjoy the community of that moment.
I think in the background of what we're all saying here is that I've never met a peer who wanted there to be less peers. We all want more friends doing awesome things and making our society experience better. We want nothing more than to have more people be in our hobby and in our nerd space. And we're happy to bring you up or have you bring us up in what you're doing. It's what keeps me coming back, is that there are so many people out there doing so many cool things that I can never get tired of it, because there's so much to do and learn.
I think, Peerage often gives us a unique opportunity to, sometimes in court or at a particular ceremony, or when certain things are happening, we get to be peers with a capital P, with all our regalia and speaking fancy words and doing all the stuff. And to, so that is one of the both obligations and pleasures of being a peer. Simultaneously, we can use that to make things, we become part of the fabric that makes the mid-realm the cool place, or a cool place, for it sets that medieval atmosphere. So we get to be the helpers to make the atmosphere for everyone else.
And I think, we're all working towards the same thing, which is sharing the joy and having more friends and recognizing people who do amazing things. And as much as I would love this conversation to continue for ever and ever, we try very hard to keep these at an hour. We have come nowhere close to answering all of these questions, or even approaching all of these questions. People have questions about peers, it seems. So it sounds like we need to work on being more approachable so they can ask them in person. But so normally we wrap up with letting our panelists have a little bit of free time to say what they want, but I've decided not to do that tonight. So I'm gonna harken back a little bit to Sir Jamie said at the very beginning that he when he was having difficulty with things, he would work to make things happen at events that he wanted to see more of. So I want to know, what do you want to see more of? What do you plan to do differently coming out of this pandemic within the society?
So since it's piggybacking on my comment, I'll start. The biggest thing is I want to spend more time with the people I love, whether that's doing the things that I was doing before or not. I very much missed fighting over this pandemic, but more so I missed my friends. And if it means that I have to do less of some of the things that I was doing, I'm very much okay with that.
Mine's going to sound much the same. I've been bringing my youngest daughter to events at her request since she was 5. And she is now 12, and she loves what she gets to do. I love getting to watch what she finds enjoyable. I want to watch more of that joy happen. If that joy comes with me on the fighting field, fantastic. But I'm going to be making an effort to make sure that that joy gets to happen other places too. Because that laugh, that smile, that opportunity to be in community is really why I want to come back.
I want to laugh more.
Get good reasons to laugh. Yeah.
Mhm.
There are 2 things that I'm going to be focusing on over the next couple of years. The first is, and this isn't anything that I'm necessarily spearheading, but there is a lot more opportunities for people to engage with each other in the arts and sciences. We've got the Craftsperson's Green. We've got Tournament of the Arts. We have the Queen's
Prize turning.
Thank you, Queens. Yes. We also have the Kingdom Arts and Sciences. And we have done in the past what I joked about calling speed dating for ANS, or arts and sciences, I should say. And that is just hooking up people that want to talk about particular topics. So there are lots of people that are already spearheading these. And my intention is to be as participatory in these things as possible. The second thing, and it's kind of what I've learned over the last couple of years with this pandemic, is there is a whole population of people that for a variety of reasons are unable or don't feel comfortable yet attending events. And they really like, some people don't like the online SCA. Some people don't like going to online classes, and I can appreciate that. But I can tell you, as somebody who taught many classes over the last couple of years online, how many comments that I received of people that said, I haven't been able to go to an event for 10 years, but man, was it amazing to sit in a room with some people to talk again. And so as we hopefully begin to reemerge and have more classes and more events, et cetera, in person, I think that it is important as much as possible to offer hybrid options or not forget about online options so that we can continue to engage people who just can't be present at events for whatever reason. So those are the 2 things that I'm looking to do over the next couple of years.
I think that's all excellent. And I look forward to finding laughter and excitement and joy wherever I find you all and all of my friends in the SCA. Goodness knows we miss seeing you guys. I think that wraps us up for the evening. And I want to say thank you so much to the 4 of you. It has been an absolute pleasure for you to be here with you and chatting with you. And you've been stellar representatives of your peerages. And I have a puppy who is about at her patience limit. But it's been wonderful. Thank you again so much. I hope that the group at home watching this is enjoying it as much as we are doing it. I guess we're going to wrap this up. This is the last of our fireside chats. We may throw in a few more. This is the last scheduled one right now. We may throw in a few more in the coming months, depending on how things go. That being said, next week is yet another opportunity to do some virtual learning because RUM has gone virtual, and so there will be a full slate of classes headed up by Master Andreas, and he's got quite a variety of teachers and excitement, and I'm super excited to get some class time in and spend time with people that way, because I know there is also like an open chat room where we can just hang out and not take classes together. So that'll be good too. I think, is there anything else?
I think that's it. We cannot express how much joy it has brought us to be able to come to the kingdom these past 4 weeks, and for panelists such as the ones we have tonight, and our Baron and Baronesses, and our Curia the week prior, and to Master Tonus the week prior, and especially to Sarah, who has produced these and helped us to bring this to you, Sarah Hasenkamp, and Rory, the cat, who has helped Sarah at every turn. Thank you so very much. Mid-Realm, this is a very difficult time for all of us, but I hope that you've gotten enough joy and light out of these voices and faces to be able to move on and hang out with us a little bit more so that we can get to the sun and we can all be together again. And until then, be safe, be kind, and be happy. Mid-Realm, we love you.